In 1969, the Cuyahoga River in Ohio was so saturated with industrial waste that it spontaneously burst into flames. This was the peak of an unregulated industrial boom. In cities like Chattanooga, the air was so dense with smog from towering smokestacks that it melted the nylon stockings off women's legs and forced drivers to turn on their headlights at noon. Economists call this problem a negative externality. The factories producing goods weren't paying the social costs of their pollution. Instead, the surrounding community absorbed those costs through ruined health, destroyed ecosystems, and burning rivers. This created a terrifying ultimatum. Society had to make a painful choice between a booming, job-creating economy and a livable planet. On one side, the public assumption was that securing pristine air and water meant shutting down factories, slowing economic growth, and sacrificing livelihoods. On the flip side, industrialists argued that if a nation wanted jobs and economic clout, it simply had to tolerate toxic waterways and smog-choked skies. But economists view this strict zero-sum trade-off as an illusion. Inefficient regulatory tools generate the friction that makes jobs and the environment feel mutually exclusive. When the U.S. government first tackled this crisis in the 1970s, it created the Environmental Protection Agency and passed laws like the Clean Air Act. These early strategies relied on what's called command and control regulation. It's a blunt instrument. The government mandates exact legal limits on how much pollution a drain pipe or smokestack can emit, and it often dictates the specific anti-pollution technology every single factory must install to hit those numbers. The first major flaw here is inflexibility. Command and control treats every factory identically. It forces companies to spend massive amounts of money on mandated upgrades that might be a cheap fix for one firm, but financially ruinous for another. The second flaw is a complete lack of incentive to improve. Once a company installs the required equipment and hits its legal pollution limit, it has zero financial reason to try and pollute even less. Command and control laws successfully saved the U.S. environment from total ruin, but their rigid design forces businesses into highly inefficient spending, acting as an unnecessary drag on overall economic output. To fix this, economists suggest upgrading to market-oriented tools. Instead of dictating exactly how companies reduce emissions, the government simply makes the act of polluting cost money. This chart shows how one of those tools, a pollution charge, actually works. The solid line represents the rising marginal cost of reducing particle emissions, which eventually intersects with a flat tax on pollution, shown by the dotted line. Because this tax exists, companies will naturally invent or adopt the absolute cheapest, most efficient ways to reduce their pollution, simply to avoid paying the government. Another tool is marketable permits, often called cap and trade. Here, the government sets a strict, shrinking limit on total national pollution and issues a specific number of tradable permits to companies. If Factory A easily reduces its emissions, it doesn't need all its permits. It can then sell its leftovers for a profit to Factory B, a company that finds environmental upgrades too expensive to do right now. Total national pollution drops to the exact same target, but the reductions are made solely by the companies who can do it most efficiently, saving the broader economy billions of dollars. This production possibilities frontier maps the relationship between environmental protection and economic output. Command and control laws trap society inside the curve at point N, inefficiently sacrificing output. Market-oriented tools push us to the optimal edge, points Q or S, maximizing both economy and environment. Moving from stagnant regulations to efficient market tools allows a society to maximize both economic output and environmental health at the same time. This efficiency is especially critical on a global scale. Low-income developing nations desperately need industrial economic growth to feed, house, and educate their citizens. This creates a fear of a race to the bottom, the danger that profit-seeking multinational companies will shift their production to developing countries with weak environmental standards just to cut costs. Low-income nations often lack the capital to absorb the costs of rigid command and control laws, making market-oriented tools a primary path to industrializing without triggering total ecological collapse. Citizens around the world are demanding balanced policy and real climate action. Protecting the planet does not require destroying the economy. By aligning financial incentives with environmental goals, governments can harness the free market to solve the problems it created.